Our next speaker, he spent 30 years in banking. And Plato would say that this person is a model citizen, because after serving in industry and in finance and so forth, he came back and what Plato would say if he were here is, did the right thing. Just give back to the people where he lives. And he's a deputy mayor. Soon to come in here and speak, Steve Koch. Steve?
Thank you, Jay, for a slightly overly flowery intro, but I appreciate that. I hesitate to be up here to introduce Karin because I long ago learned when somebody's mother is in the room, they probably are much better to actually tell the real story. But you don't want to know the real story. It's probably more appropriate that I'm here and President Preckwinkle is going to follow me because Karin represents really something unique and something that I think all of us should be proud of, because the mayor and board president Preckwinkle got together 4 years ago now, 4.5 years ago, and did something that was the right thing. I don't know whether it's Plato's terms or not, but it was just simply the right thing, which was to join together to launch the Cook County Workforce Partnership and make it a truly collaborative effort to bring some uniformity and consistency and really excellence to the region's workforce system. And if you think about it, that's not always the way government works, and I think it's worth celebrating that just in and of itself, that people join together to do the right thing, and really as a result of that have created the nation's second largest local workforce development area, and that in and of itself is a pretty big thing. So the workforce, as a result of that, not only consolidated existing city and county workforce resources, but even probably more importantly, as a nonprofit, it's had an ability to secure additional funds through expanding the reach and the impact of all the employment and training services that exist in the region. And again, the ability to concentrate more resources and bring resources from outside of government to this incredibly important area is, I think, a really important element that came out of this step forward that would happen 4.5 years ago. So it's really a pleasure that I'm here on behalf of the mayor to commend Karin and the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership for their dedication and leadership on this really important element of the city's economic vitality. And it's equally my pleasure to be able to introduce Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle, who was really the architect of this of what we have here today and the success that we've gotten as a result of her having the vision to put this together. So, President Preckwinkle.
So good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you, Steve, for that kind introduction. Why don't I talk just a little bit about the genesis of this, which Steve alluded to. Shortly after Mayor Emanuel was elected, but before he took office, he and I met, and we talked about the fact that we shared a building downtown, but there wasn't much cooperation or collaboration between the city and the county. So shortly after he was sworn in, we put together a task force to look at potential areas of collaboration. They came up with a couple dozen ideas. Among them was combining our workforce initiatives. And so the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership is a result of that collaboration around trying to figure out how the city and the county could work together better. I'm very grateful that Karin Norington-Reaves took on the challenge of heading up this operation. She's a smart and talented person, as you'll hear, and I think a great person to lead the partnership in this kind of difficult time. She's created an entity that's demand-driven, that strives to ensure that every person who comes to the entity is able to help build a career, jobs with career ladders, and that every business has the talent that it needs to grow and compete in our global economy. Please welcome her warmly.
Wow. So with that, I guess I better knock it out of the park. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Mayor Emanuel and President Preckwinkle for giving me the dream job that I actually didn't know I wanted. Kurt Summers is here, our city treasurer, and Kurt was Tony's chief of staff at the time. And he recruited me for the job. And I don't know if I can say this, but I'm going to tell you. I told him, hell no. I was like, isn't that the agency that's really embattled and in the newspaper all the time with federal investigations? I don't want any part of that. And he maneuvered me into talking myself into taking the job. That is a skilled man. Stay away from him. He's very slick. So thank you, all of you. Steve, I'd also like to thank you for being here and for just constantly being a great supporter and a great sounding board. And I hope to mimic your Zen state. He is always calm and unflappable. I am not, but I aspire to that. Jay Doherty, I also want to acknowledge you. Jay happened to accompany some colleagues several months ago to meet with me, and he was blown away by our work. And he's like, I can't believe that I've never really heard about what you're doing. You know, you should speak at the City Club. And then he made it happen. So thank you very much. I'd also like to acknowledge our current and past board members who are with us today. Our co-chairs, Dr. Ken Ender from Harper College and Mr. Frank Clark, formerly of Commonwealth Edison, could not be here today, but they extend their greetings. But could our current and former board members just stand up if you're in the audience today? I know 2 of you are here. I've seen you. Thank you. Thank you. They are civic leaders who have supported our work every step of the way, so I just want to acknowledge you all. Also, we have a variety of our funders here. I'm going to give you some shout outs later on. Representatives of our delegate agencies, raise your hand. Juan, I know I saw you. Oh, it's a bunch of you. And the more than 300 business partners that decided to take a chance and collaborate with us. For those of you who are here, I thank you as well. Finally, well, not finally, before I get to finally, with the staff of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership who are in attendance, please stand up. So I've told each and every one of you before, and I'm going to tell you again, it is my absolute honor and privilege to get up every day and come to work with you. You are some of the most dedicated professionals I've ever met, and I'm grateful to work with you. Thank you. And I promised you it would be a wild ride. I said, just hang on. We're going to get this done. And I thank you for hanging on for that ride. And then finally, in terms of acknowledgments, I want to thank the one person who makes the life that I lead completely possible. As you all know, it's important to have a confidant, a cheerleader, and when necessary, a critic and advisor. This job has been all-consuming over the past 4 or so years. And as a divorced single mother, the demands of this job can be really, really difficult to balance. Have to do a lot of travel and a lot of late night working. And so it's always of great comfort to me to know that my son is well provided for when I am not able to be there. So for all those things, I thank my mother, Jerry. All right, so lest we get all choked up, I'm going to move on. So I know most of you came here today thinking that you were going to hear about workforce development, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, federal and state tax incentives, disadvantaged people, how the city and the county work together. I'm really not here to talk about any of that stuff. I'm just simply going to tell you about the work that I do, the organization that I lead, and why what we do is so critical to the city and the county's economic vitality, and then finally where you fit in that entire picture. But before I do that, I want to tell you a brief story. So once upon a time, there was a 17-year-old young man who worked in the deli section of a local grocery store. Like many 17-year-olds of his time, he dreamed of becoming a doctor. Because most of us aim high. We aim for middle class or upper class employment and opportunities that will allow us to sustain our families and jobs that are fulfilling to us. Well, turned out, tried as he might, he applied to numerous schools. He didn't get in. So after a few years, he returned back to that store where he'd once worked. He'd gotten his bachelor's degree. But this time he didn't go to work in the deli section. He went to work as an assistant manager. And over the years, he would finish his MBA, and soon he rose in leadership. And the grocery store became a chain of stores, and a chain of stores that pervaded all of Cook County. At that company, the young man learned the value of customer service and hospitality, but most importantly, he learned the value and the dignity of work. The company that he loved was purchased by another company, and as so often is the case in mergers and acquisitions, the culture of the company changed. And so our now wizened young man, who's a little bit older, left for some greener pastures, and he went to another company, eventually became the chairman and CEO there. He had a vision for the type of store he'd like to create and the types of services that he wanted to offer. And eventually he opened one store, then another, and another, until he had 16 under his belt, with a total of 29 in the making. But he had a problem. And so do I. Where would he find the talent and the staff to fill his stores and serve his customers? So that's where we come in. In response to this hiring challenge and this PowerPoint challenge, we activated our network of 49 delegate agencies, our high-volume workforce centers, our 10 high-volume workforce centers, the 9 satellite centers that we operate, and one of our 4 sector centers that happens to be focused on retail and hospitality. We then set out to pre-screen 3,500 individuals for employment, and 1,500 were hired. So by now, you all probably know the young man that I'm speaking of, Bob Mariano. So I lift up Mariano's as an example, not purely because of the sheer volume of that engagement, although let me tell you, volume is nice. The volume is impressive, but it's more important to know that the work we do in partnership with Mariano's is the same that we do for CVS, for Walmart, for Cintas, for FedEx, for UPS, and for the countless other small, medium, and large companies throughout this region since we've launched 3.5 years ago. We have assisted companies in finding store clerks, bank tellers, machinists, truck drivers, and even a chief financial officer. So why do I tell you all that? I don't want you to think we're a staffing firm, because we're not. We're far more than that. We are a nonprofit, as you've heard. We serve as the designated workforce development administrative agency for the city of Chicago and Cook County and the 132 municipalities therein. And we wear many hats. We are an umbrella organization. We receive funds, and we are a funder ourselves. We manage the administration of federal dollars that are used to prepare people in this region to become active members of the labor force. To do this, we partner with colleges, high schools, public and private training programs, and we work with companies, big and small, to ensure that they have the talent they need to compete in today's global economy. We fashion solutions to local business challenges by connecting companies to local, state, and federal funds, creating innovative hiring solutions, analyzing and providing labor market data and information for both the supply and the demand side of the workforce equation. So what you see here illustrated is your public workforce system. All of those pieces are interdependent. All of those resources are designed to address both the supply side, the talent needed, and the demand side, the employers that are seeking that talent. The access to and the provision of services designed to create an unending talent pipeline that not only meets the business need, but ensures that our communities are flush with people who are employed in careers, family-sustaining careers, not just jobs. You saw a glimpse of our budget. About 90% of those funds are federal dollars. And so given the sizable investment in workforce services and the breadth of offerings, it might surprise you to know that only 13% of the nation's businesses actually use their local public workforce system. I think there are a lot of reasons for this, but most importantly to me, I think it's a shame. As business owners, as business leaders, you have invested in this system. Your tax dollars go to fund this system. And so what I say to employers is, let me give you your tax dollars back. Doesn't that make sense? So Mariano's was not unlike most of the nation's businesses. I'm sure you've all heard the refrain that there's a lack of skilled workers. There's a lack of skilled talent in today's society. There's this notion of the skills gap or the talent divide. This issue has been one of the most hotly debated topics this side of Hillary Clinton's emails. From the federal government to the state government, from K-12 to higher education, big business to small, we have all heard this complaint. But I suggest to you that the issue is more of a misalignment than a gap. So consider this, 58% of employers report that college graduates are not adequately prepared for work. Now, I lift that up because there's a common perception that those that we serve, the job seekers that we serve, are disadvantaged, are the hardest to serve, really don't have the skills. There's some truth, but not an entire truth to that. More than 34% of the people in our system have college degrees. They are there because through no fault of their own, they have not been able to hold on to their job. In most cases, it is because the companies have closed down. So when you look at Mondelez, when you look at all the downsizings that you see in the newspaper, we do rapid response for all those individuals. That means we go out to those companies, we meet with those individuals, and we share with them the resources that are available to them to help them get back on their feet again. Because as many of you probably know, losing your job is probably one of the most degrading and soul-shattering experiences that anyone can ever go through. We're there to help buck them up, give them any additional skills they might need, and help them connect with employment again. So the most in-demand competencies that we hear from employers, and the most in demand by 2020, judgment and decision-making, communications, analysis, and administration. Now, how many of you learned that in college? I didn't. So, in fact, technical skills rank last amongst employers' needs because they feel they can teach you the technical skills. But if you don't know how to show up on time, if you don't have basic problem-solving capacity, if you don't exercise good judgment, we can't even get to the technical side of the equation. So workforce development stands at the intersection of the technical skills training and the foundational personal competencies. And for you practitioners in this field, you all know that you can't have one without the other. So to address the first of these, we launched in 2012, when the partnership first started, we assessed the local labor market demand to ensure that all the federal dollars that we oversee were being used to train individuals in the region's high demand, high growth occupations, and those only, so that our system would be responsive to the need that we were aware of, and then for the need that would arise, we can fashion individual and unique training programs for those particular employers. So we narrowed a field of nearly 800 occupations that folks could choose from. 800 occupations that people were supposed to come in and choose from for training. We narrowed that down to a cluster of 40 occupations within the area's 7 high-growth, high-demand sectors. So these, and only these sectors, are now what we train individuals in. This is aligned with Chicago Public Schools. It is aligned with the career and technical education focus within the city colleges of Chicago. We cannot demonstrate a substantial return on investment if we're not aligning our work with what employers are seeking. So as for these less tangible competencies, judgment and analysis and such, those are critical skills that can be acquired with practical experience. And my grandmother used to have this saying, you know, baby, some lessons are better bought with than taught with. Now, typically that was when we had done something none of us had any business doing, right? And she would say, you're gonna learn. And so the way that I apply that to this work, however, is that sometimes you learn best by doing. not from reading it in a book or from someone telling you. So sometimes you simply have to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. And in fact, employers seem to prefer this. Internships and work experience are the two most heavily weighted attributes in hiring decisions. Some of you may know this as OJT, or on-the-job training. We have seen a fourfold increase in the utilization of OJT because we were intentional about making sure that employers knew that this resource existed, and again, giving you your tax dollars back, right? So we also expect to see an even greater increase, thanks in large part to a generous grant from JP Chase, many of whom are here today. That has allowed us to study this effort and to next develop a marketing strategy. Okay. Well, it is just doing whatever it wants to do. And to next develop a marketing strategy to both job seekers and employers alike that will help to increase, again, that reliance on these dollars. So to date, the partnership's federal investment of over $74 million, and this is just a snapshot in time, has yielded 6-month average wage earnings of over $180 million. Now, where else can you get a nearly 2.5% return on your investment? That is amazing. And those figures are only for our adult population. It doesn't even include the work that we do with young people. Because for our youth, our focus is not necessarily on them being employed, it's more on them being employable lifelong. In the 3 years since our launch, more than 46,000 people have formally enrolled in services. And what that means is that they have access to career coaching and advising, the development of individual employment plans, free occupational training, job placement, and post-placement retention services. I am overjoyed to say that we are meeting and exceeding every single federal measure. And to top it all off, we have an 86% placement rate. This changes lives. I've said before, and I will say it everywhere I go, and my team knows my mantra. You all can probably say it with me in unison. I always say that workforce development is the foundation of economic development. In order to compete, companies must have people to do their jobs. Income has to be generated and reinvested in our communities in order for our communities to thrive. You cannot have successful economic development without focusing on workforce development as that cornerstone. So despite our successes to date, one of the things that most resonates with me is a sentiment of an African proverb that says, "One hand cannot clap alone." We must continually collaborate across agencies, across programs, and across communities, because our collective impact is far greater than anything we can do alone. So in the spirit of collaboration, let's see if it works this time. Thank you, Pedro. In the spirit of collaboration, we proudly partner with the Chicago Public Schools to ensure that all of the career counselors are aware of the workforce resources available to their students. We're jointly working currently with CPS to articulate career pathways so that these students are clear about how to get to where they want to go and the support that's available to help them get there. And the partnership is now investing in the city's student re-engagement centers to ensure that those who are returning to complete high school will also be connected to career coaching and employment resources. We're also partnering with Chicago Public Libraries. Can anybody guess the primary reason that people go to the library and use a computer? To find a job. So we've conducted training for the public librarians so that they can steer people to the existing resources that are available. And we're even in discussions now about opportunities for joint programming and perhaps even co-location of workforce centers. So we also partner with the city colleges and suburban colleges such as Harper and Oakton on a variety of sector-based initiatives Currently, we're focusing in healthcare, transportation, distribution, and logistics, as well as manufacturing, to help ensure that we're creating that talent pipeline and providing the training necessary to support our region's businesses. So recently, our local work has also brought us some national attention, about which we're extremely excited. I'm going to tell you about two things, but one in particular is the 100,000 Opportunities Initiative, or 100K as we call it. This is a national movement by the corporate and foundation communities to impact the startling pandemic of 18 to 24-year-olds in this country who are neither connected to employment nor education. We have more than 200,000 of these young people right here in the greater Chicagoland area. The partnership, its network of agencies, and a host of community-based organizations came together on August 13th for a hiring event, the likes of which none of us had ever seen before. Starbucks is the national corporate lead on this, and they now have more than 30 companies that have bought into this vision. 29 of those companies came out on August 13th to interview young people in this region. The partnership and its agencies pre-screened more than 1,200 young adults. And I'm happy to say that on that day, more than 750 job offers were issued. In collaboration with Thrive Chicago and the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance, we will continue to hold community-based hiring events for the life of this initiative, which is scheduled to sunset in 2018. We will do this in an effort to provide true alternatives to our region's young people. Now, we also have some great news that I can't technically share with you yet, because it's not public. So I'll tell you what I can tell you without telling you. We also, on a national effort, have just been asked to lead a national initiative focused on retail and retail-related occupations, so transportation, distribution, and logistics, light manufacturing, and hospitality. We will pick 8 to 10 workforce boards from across the country to teach them what we've learned about sector-based, demand-driven focus, and to help them create their own sector centers that are just like the ones that we have created here in the past several years. We're very excited about this, and it also added an additional $10.9 million additional monies to those that we've already leveraged and managed to raise. So that total there says 19.2, and now with the addition of that 10.9, we're at over $30 million that we've actually brought into this region. None of which would have been possible had we still been units of local government. As a nonprofit, we have been able to leverage that status and really expand the funds that are available. And because we're doing this, we can go outside of the constraints of the federal requirements and serve more people and serve them in more creative and innovative ways. I really want to lift up the McCormick Foundation, J.P. Morgan Chase, City Foundation, Chicago Community Trust, and the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance for believing in us, for taking a chance on our work, for encouraging us and supporting everything we do. We knew that this could be done, and we have demonstrated that it was absolutely possible all along. So thank you for believing in us. As I close, I have a request for each of you. As I said, we cannot do this alone. So we're all in this together. It can't be okay for any of us to be suffering from the chronic unemployment that we see in our communities. There are communities in this region that have a 30% unemployment rate, and it's not acceptable, and we won't stop until we're able to change that. So to the business community, I say, put us to work for you. Use the system created with your tax dollars as a talent pipeline. Use the resources freely available to you to improve your existing labor force and become champions. Tell 10 of your colleagues about the work that we do. To our community-based organizations, I say to you this. I want to share with you some words of inspiration from one of the most admirable men I know, Mr. Frank Clark, our outgoing board chair. A few weeks ago, Frank sent me a lovely message congratulating us on our latest grant, that big one that I can't talk about. And this is what his message said, quote, "This is simply outstanding. It's a direct reflection of your leadership and commitment. You and your team may not get all the recognition deserved, but what really counts is the extraordinary service you provide to those with the greatest need." So I implore all of you from community-based organizations, those of you who are workforce development practitioners, to continue the transformative work that you've been doing all along. Because I recognize that our work is far more important than it is popular, and far more impactful than it is acknowledged. But be that as it may, we must continue to hone our craft, whether by deeply understanding our employers' needs and guiding them and working with them to create a solution, or by coaching and advising people along their personal journey to economic empowerment through lifelong employment. And finally, to our civic and community leaders, direct your constituencies to workforce centers or community-based organizations specializing in workforce development. Whatever your role is in this space, whatever your work, my hope is that we will work collaboratively to amplify and expand our services and ensure that our region's economy thrives in every way possible. Thank you so much.
I think she absolutely deserves a standing ovation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So, from a non-native Chicagoan, we really do live in the greatest Cook County, Chicago. Don't we have a fabulous city? We just do. So don't any of you all give me crap for being from Springfield. Those of you all who do. Thank you, Karen. Just the information you've shared has just been fabulous. And for those people who've downgraded us, whatever. I'm supposed to acknowledge Mike Jasso, who's in the room. My apologies. So sorry about that. We missed you earlier. We have just a few minutes for some questions. So you have answered every question in the room. There is not a question to be asked. You have stumped the panel. Is this a first? I don't know that we've ever had this happen before.
How about a question and a request? Thank you so much for what you're doing. Would you come out to Franklin Park at the end of the year, the school year, and do an event with us?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
oh, Commissioner?
Karen, thank you for the wonderful work you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
We as elected officials get tons of people coming through our offices every day. How can we be portals to your system to get people to come into our offices and be a portal to get them inside your system electronically at our offices?
Man, you're reading off my notes. So he's actually asking how we can, get you electronically to actually work through the system to be a part of the system. I think that's fabulous. We talk about doing things electronically. I'll let you step to the mic to answer the question. Actually, you're reading off my notes, man.
So, number one, I know that you get a lot of people who come into your office. So I'm happy, number one, I'll provide you with materials so that you can direct them to the right places, because where they really need to go are the workforce centers or the community-based organizations that specialize in this work. We do assessments to see where people are from a technical perspective, as well as where they are from an internal motivational perspective. So I will provide you with contact information. You will have our website, and you'll be able to reach us in any way possible. We're also revamping our website. I want to acknowledge Marilyn Katz from MK Communications, who's working with us on our communication strategic plan so that we can do an even better job of outreach and engagement of our elected officials and our community leaders.